Hi there, and welcome to this week's edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is made by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. And as I say every week, guys, it's not just the podcast that's free. We've got the forums, we've got articles, there's a history archive on the site. It's all original, independent, and free content, by us for you. It is episode 101 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast. We had the centenary edition last week, so hopefully you enjoyed that. I'm your host tonight. I'm Colin Armstrong. It's getting mixed up there. If you're a new listener to the pod, we would encourage you to subscribe and share on social media. We have over 3,000 subscribers at the moment, so thanks for that so far. The pod is live tonight. It's a Sunday night, which makes that wee mess up there all the more embarrassing. But the pod will be available to download and stream on a variety of platforms from tomorrow, which include Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and Spotify. I'm having an absolute mare. So lots to get through tonight. The Kilmarnock game yesterday, a good result at Ibrox yesterday, but a lot of stuff to come out of that worth talking about. And it's been a busy week at Ibrox. There's been a lot happening. There's been speculation about Ryan Kent. Obviously, Steven Gerrard made some comments yesterday about Alfredo Morelos, which we'll go into. Ross McCrory and Greg Docherty have left the club. There's been some issues around Castore and some of the kits that have been getting issued. And there's also been stuff that, fans getting allowed back into the stadiums and how that's going to be decided. And if I've got time, we'll have a wee preview of the Hamilton game next week. So joining me tonight, we've got John McCallum. How are you, John?
I'm great. Yeah, feeling good. Spent the day in the Trossachs.
Yeah, so did I. We were discussing that.
I was. You were on higher ground than me. For once, you weren't just looking down on me metaphorically. You were doing it literally.
Yep, in every way possible. I was waving at you, but you totally ignored me. Yeah, I was up Benvenue today, and it was. Where were you?
Around Loch Achray. That's kind
okay.
That's kind of forest paths around Loch Achray. We went for a walk with the family, so that was lovely. Because yesterday, I really enjoyed the game yesterday. So it's been a good weekend so far.
I was up. I was, as you say, looking down on you from way up high in Benvenue, and it was like it's me and the family have kind of started this recently. My daughter especially was quite keen to start getting into hill walking, so we started it once the 5 mile restriction was lifted on lockdown, and I think we've got 4 under our belts now. And this one today was a bit strange. Everyone I've done so far, especially the sort of bigger ones, the ascent is it's there almost straight away. You're going up the way. But it was quite flat for long. And the longer it went on, I thought, when this thing comes, it's going to be it's going to be big. It wasn't a walk. It was a climb. For the last hour, it was pretty much hands and
straight up,
and climbing up, and it was quite peaty and boggy at stages. So I came back with my feet absolutely soaking. But
much of a view at the top. It was a
it was a bit of a cloudy day.
Predicted.
Yeah. BBC Weather app, by the way, absolute shambles. Every time they say one thing, it's totally something else that happens.
That's just Rangers supporters that get that from BBC. No one else gets it. They mess it up just deliberately for us.
It's probably true, John. To be fair, we could see the locks, we could see Venaker and Achray and all that, but you couldn't really see much beyond that. So, but it was good. Midgie Central as well, by the way. That's the first time I've really had the midgies because it wasn't that breezy. So there was long periods. You were like, oh, like every climb, you're like, oh, I just want this done. But once you get to the top, it's good. You get a sense of achievement and all that kind of thing, and it feels like it's worth it. But for good periods of it today, you're like, oh, pissing me rain. I'm not enjoying this. I'm getting eaten alive with the midgies. And that John's
down there looking at you from the car.
He's away down there, like, when you go, mate. Nice aye, pretty much. But no, it was good. It was good. So and as you say, a good result yesterday. And also joining us tonight, we've got the gaffer. He's a late substitution for Ian Duff, who I'm sure it's just a coincidence couldn't make it tonight when the Champions League final is on. So how are you, Stuart?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. I'm not interested in watching that guff anyway, so I'd much rather talk to you guys about Rangers or hill walking or whatever it is you're going about there.
Or second waves and second lockdowns, which
stuff like that.
We're talking before we came on air. It's inevitable. It's coming. Wave 2 is coming. But hopefully the football will continue through it. So, guys, probably best to get right into it. Kilmarnock game yesterday, another 3 points. It was on the back of a fairly poor result last week for the guys to talk about on the Centenary show. I thought there was a wee bit of an overreaction. Don't get me wrong, I was a wee bit disappointed with the result at Killie, but it's no Killie, sorry, at Livy. But it is a difficult place to go, I think, and we've had troubles there before. I don't think the pitch helps. I don't think that's an excuse. I don't think it helps, and Livy sitting with sort of 6 men at behind the ball at times, so it was difficult. It was disappointing, but the reaction I thought was fairly disappointing. A wee bit better yesterday, but you could see some of the stuff online again on Twitter at half time. You could see, supporters starting to get frustrated and Gerrard getting a wee bit of criticism and stuff like that. So, Frankie, I'll come to you first in this. The lineup, I must admit, when I saw the lineup, I was like, oh, now I know. I mean, I've not been overly enamoured with Morelos' general sort of demeanour recently. I know he's chipped in with a couple of goals, but I just don't think he's been given us everything that he could. And so I was kind of thinking, it's maybe time to make a change. But I must admit, I was a wee bit surprised he made it yesterday. It was a tricky game. I thought he maybe would have went with a sort of tried and tested lineup and then maybe looked to make the changes next week against Hamilton. So when you saw the lineup, what did you think? Because, the first thing you see, no Morelos, not even in the team, not in the squad, and Roof and Itten are in there making their debuts.
I was pretty surprised as well. I mean, Morelos hasn't had a great start to the season, but he's probably not been any worse generally than any of the other attacking players. I mean, he didn't have a good game at Livy. He didn't really get himself in the game at all in the first half. But to be fair, he didn't really have any service in the Livy match at all. The first half we were appalling. The second half, though, he was never really in the game either, and we did look a bit more dangerous later in the game after he went off. But to be fair, we had more attacking players on it by that point as well. So he could probably feel a wee bit hard done by, but clearly there's stuff happening in the background, whether or not there's a transfer imminent or whether or not he's just knuckling down and doing the business and training. I don't know. We can only trust in the manager in that sense. And that team yesterday was a statement of intent with the manager. It was a statement in his own self-belief and self-confidence in his players. And I mean, there's not many people would have guessed that Barker would have started. I mean, he came on in the Livy game and looked okay, did a few bits and pieces, but he had a good game yesterday, and all credit to the lad, because there's always somebody that's the Rangers fans boo boys, and Barker is one of them. He tends to get a lot of stick. Some of it valid, some of it not so much, and I was pleased to see him do well yesterday. And the same way with Itten and Roof. I think Roof clearly isn't anywhere near match fit or match sharp, but you can see there's a player there. I really quite look at him. He's aggressive. He's quick. He gets stuck in. He doesn't shirk any tackles. He works hard in and around the park, and it's exactly what Morelos does do when he's fully fit and playing well. So it's good that, I mean, it's not exactly a carbon copy of Morelos. Are very different in terms of how they approach the game and their probably their lifestyle. But he's Roof's a talented player, and I think the quicker we can get him and Ito playing more regularly and get them sharp, the better. And as I say, Morelos had to drop out, so we have to move on. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to win games, and we need to do it with players that are, like the manager said, that are focused on Rangers, not on trying to leave. So the manager picked a team, and he was proven right. We got a good result.
John, on the Morelos situation, I mean, as I said in the sort of the intro, I do think he's struggled this season. I don't think he's given us everything, and that frustrates me a wee bit, because he's done so well for Rangers over the last couple of years. To see it end like this is slightly disappointing. So Gerrard was quite strong in his criticism after, and it seemed to imply that Morelos made it easy for him. He's not seen it in training, and I still think he looks a few pounds overweight. And we're 5 games into the season now. You would expect the sharpness to pick up. So does it look to you like this is now the officially the beginning and the end? It feels like we've been here a few times with Morelos, but the fact that he never made the squad at all yesterday, does that feel like it's the final straw, and that this is the beginning of the end of his Rangers career?
I don't think it's the final straw. I suspect if Lille or anybody else make a bid high enough, the club will let him leave. I think when we bought Roof and Itten, I think everybody assumed he would leave shortly after that. I think the assumption was that Lille had been told, yeah, we'll sell him. You just need to let us wait until we get in a replacement because our season's up and running and yours isn't. So bear with us on this. And then it all seemed to go quiet. So, like you suggested there, I suspect there is stuff going on behind the scenes. I suspect Lille or other clubs are, they're in touch with agents or they're in touch with the club. I think the Lille president was interviewed during the week, I think I saw, and he said they'd made a bid and it had been rejected, and he hadn't yet decided. He still thought there was a need for them to strengthen up front. So we certainly seemed to hint that it was, I don't know if it was a Lille president, it was somebody from Lille was interviewed and was saying that. But yeah, I think the club have prepared for him leaving. I thought Gerrard's comments yesterday were fairly damning. To come out with that, basically accuse him of not being professional. Which is, that's as big an insult as you're going to give, a manager is going to give to a player. To suggest that it was an easy decision to leave him out. That's a statement of intent. I suppose you have to applaud Gerrard, certainly saying, making it pretty clear that no one player is bigger than the team. If he needs to turn to Morelos, none of us know if this is going to go through. The transfer window's open for another month anyway, isn't it? I think it's open till end of September. It's open for a while. So
is it no October? I thought it was October. It was open.
Stretch out. You don't want an unhappy player in the squad. You don't want somebody, certainly not somebody who's as good as Morelos. Not doing it for us. You don't want to see it turn sour with the support for whom he is or has been, something of a talisman. He's what, the last player left, Murphy as well, I think, but certainly he's the last player left from Coutinho's reign. The kind of one bright spot from that. I mean, Kendeis, the one kind of bright spot from that. So I would be sad if it turns sour. I don't think we could say it's the end. I suspect there will be still some twists and turns. But it certainly now wouldn't come as a big surprise if something happened in the next week, 10 days. I think Itten and Roof did enough yesterday to keep their place. He certainly Roof did enough to keep his place, but I actually thought Itten did all right. So there wouldn't be a big clamour to have, to get Morelos back in the team. If the game had gone differently yesterday, then Gerrard had a problem. If we hadn't won yesterday, then I think Gerrard had a problem. Because ultimately, if your best striker isn't even making your squad, then it's all very well saying he made it easy for me not to pick him. But if you're not winning the game, then you better go and figure out how to fix that, because you need your best striker in your squad. And I would certainly have been happy with Morelos on the bench and available to come on had things not been going well. So we'll just need to see. But yeah, it wouldn't come as a big surprise if this was the beginning of the end. I'm hoping it's not, but we'll have to wait and see, Colin. I think that's what's going to happen over the next few days.
Thank you. One more sort of thing on the Morelos thing. I feel there's been a shift in the dynamic in the relationship between Gerrard and Morelos. Gerrard was very supportive of him. Now that's what makes the whole Morelos thing for me slightly frustrating, because he has been a bit silly at times. He has been vindicated picked on at times. Some of his sending offs were laughable, but others you would have to argue were justified. And when he got involved in some of the stupid stuff, Gerrard and the club defended him. I think there's been a shift in that dynamic since the Hearts game when he left him out at the Hearts Cup tie, and he was late back and he came back overweight. I wonder if something happened then. And as John said there, the comments from Gerrard yesterday, it kind of reeked to me of, I'm just done with having to deal with this guy. You know what I mean? He's not putting it in training. He's a wee bit overweight. We need the points. I'm under pressure. And it's almost as if he's saying he just simply cannot trust Morelos. And as I say, it's a sad end to the whole thing. But do you feel that? Do you think there's been a shift in the dynamic in the relationship between Gerrard and Morelos?
There has to be. I mean, you didn't drop your best player, effectively your best player, for your squad if there isn't a problem behind the scenes. I mean, Morelos is a great player when he's fully fit and in full flow. He's fantastic to watch. I mean, how many times we see Morelos receive the ball for deep, turn a guy and go and score a goal or create a goal or whatever. It's fantastic, but he's not done it for long enough. Okay, we've had the COVID stuff, so he's not been playing, but he's not looked entirely sharp. Clearly, this season, I think we've changed the way we played a wee bit. Morelos and the strikers are hard to come a wee bit deeper and link the play more rather than sort of working the channels. And does that play to Morelos' strength? Maybe no, but I think probably the Gerrard and the coaching guys, they probably want to see the team strengths playing to the team rather than being about one guy, especially if that guy wants to move on. I mean, I think we didn't know exactly what's happened. So I didn't really think speculations all that helpful. But at the end of the day, the manager signed 2 new strikers, so he wasn't going to spend the thick end of 4 million on Roof and I mean another 2 or 3 million on Eaton and no play them. It just doesn't work like that. But it has to be careful, Morelos, as well. I mean, we can't let the guy rot away because he's a big asset. We're wanting 20 million for him, and if he's not playing, that value drops quickly and drops significantly. So it's a difficult situation for the manager to be in. But at the same time, he's maybe expecting a reaction for the player. John's right. I mean, it's not entirely certain that Lille or anybody else is going to match a 20 million. So if they didn't, then the manager's hopefully maybe to get a reaction for Morelos. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, we're coming up to an international break. I don't know what's happening with regards to Morelos and Colombia just now. I don't know if he'll be expecting to go home for a fortnight. I doubt it. I doubt the manager will be allowing that this time. I mean, his wife's had the kid, and I think they're both back in the UK, so that there shouldn't be any reason for him to go back to Colombia. So it's up to Morelos if now to knuckle down and get back to the form that we all know and appreciate and make himself indispensable if he's still at Rangers. If not, and we move him on. We've had bigger and better players than Morelos in the past that we've had to sell. So it happens. The most important thing for me is that the team's winning, and that's what happened yesterday. And so the manager's entirely justified in the team he picked.
John, on Roof and obviously they made their debuts yesterday. Roof got his goal. He was a wee bit unlucky before that. He had a really good header, which came off the post, and David Wren, who obviously contributes to the pod, he sent me a YouTube video of previous goals from Roof, and he is good in the air. You know, he scored a right few good goals in the air in the clip that David sent me. I mean, as Stuart had sort of alluded to earlier on, he's obviously still trying to catch up. He's a little bit behind fitness-wise. But I agree with Stuart. I thought there was enough there to give you hope for the future. Itten, I still think looks a wee bit rusty. What about you in terms of their performance? Was there enough encouraging signs there to make you think that these guys are going to be 2 good assets to the club?
Yes, there was. I thought Roof's goal. I liked Roof's goal as a striker's goal. You know, it was instinctive. He was in the right place when the ball came in. And I liked that about it. I thought he worked pretty hard. I thought he was doing a lot of stuff off the ball in terms of dropping deep, pulling defenders around, creating space for others. I thought he had a pretty decent game. You get the impression he's still a bit short of where you'd hope he would be in terms of sharpness. And he's obviously still getting to know his teammates. I thought him and Itten at times tried to link up, but just didn't quite happen. They're just not quite on the same wavelength, and I think you can excuse that. You know, they've been playing together for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, so I thought that could be excused. I'm still I'm still in that mood with both of them, that that they've probably got another half before I start criticising them. My cousin watched Itten's first, when Itten came on as a sub, and I was watching it. My cousin was watching it at the same time, and within 5 minutes he'd written Itten off. He said, "Oh, he's a donkey." He's rotten. I was laughing my head off. That's just typical Rangers supporters.
That's us, isn't it?
5 minutes. So I'm giving him more than my cousin's been giving him. But I thought Roof played well. As I say, took his goal well. I thought his all-round play was good. I thought he was a kind of solid 7 out of 10. And I saw enough for me to think, yeah, this guy's this guy stays fit. This guy's an asset. He's got a number of things going for him, which I quite liked. Itten's different, isn't he? He's a different type of player. You saw initially, you see this, kind of big tall guy. You think, okay, this is interesting. Is this kind of an edge in the air? And I'm not sure he is that type of player. I think he's definitely more comfortable with the ball on the ground. I'm not sure he is an out-and-out striker either. I don't know. I don't quite know what his best position will be yet. But I did think him and Roof in particular try to link up on 2 or 3 occasions. Didn't just quite come off. But I got the impression that it will come off eventually. You two will get on the same wavelength. You look like two intelligent football players. You're at the right age. You've done your time elsewhere. This is a place where you guys could flourish. So I actually was quite pleased. I was quite excited by aspects of yesterday, and I thought, particularly the second half, I thought up front we looked all right actually. What did you think, Colin?
I have to be honest. My mate was up yesterday, so we were watching the game. First of all, I had issues with my RTV feed. It kept on. I airplay it to my telly. It kept on cutting out. So there was, and my mate.
Are you
was
blaming
there.
Itten for that?
No. What I'm saying is that I missed chunks of the game, and I was chatting to my mate as well. What I did see, Roof looked a wee bit more impressive than Itten. I'm a bit like you. I'm not sure about Itten. I don't quite know what type of player he is. I'm not writing him off like your cousin done, not at all. But I'm still trying to figure out what exactly the type of player he is. Whereas I think Roof looks, to me, he looks like a number 9. That's what he looks like to me. The finish I thought was good. He let it come across his body. He opened his body up and just calmly sort of.
Yeah, it's a striker's finish, wasn't it?
And
it
was a natural finish. Yeah, and that gives me the impression that he's a natural finisher. So yeah, I think, and the header as well, I thought was an absolute peach of header, the one that came off the post. So yeah, I still need to see more to try and figure out what type of player he is, because me and David were talking yesterday. He was convinced that he would be the number 9, and I wasn't so sure. I thought it would have been Roof. So I still need to find, but yeah, certainly enough there to sort of give, hope for the future that these two guys will give us more goals, because I think last season and maybe over the last couple of seasons we've been a wee bit overly reliant on one player. So if we can spread the goals out amongst a few more players, and that can only be a positive thing, I think. Frankie, coming back to you, we sort of touched on it a wee bit earlier on, and just maybe quickly your comments on this. Brandon Barker's had a lot of stick this season, and you wouldn't really have to say that some of it's justified. He has kind of struggled to nail down his position and nail down a sort of starting berth on that side. And as we've sort of alluded to earlier on, Rangers fans just find a player and they don't let it go, and they give him stick. I mean, the boy was getting an absolute doing for his hair a couple of weeks ago as well there. But Gerrard seems to be sticking with him, and he's maybe seen something in training, and he started again yesterday. What were your thoughts on his overall performance? I think there's signs that he's starting to find his feet a wee bit, and he's starting to maybe believe that he can maybe do something in this team, and his confidence is rising a wee bit.
Aye, you can tell the guy's a talented football player. I mean, the good thing about him is similar as Kent, he's 2-footed, so he can go either way. He's really quick. Apparently he's the fastest player on our books, so that's another positive for him. I mean, it's difficult when you're playing against packed defences and teams that sit very deep for him to utilise his pace, but he managed it yesterday a few times, obviously, or particularly at the second goal. I don't think he was outstanding or anything like that, but he was neat and tidy. He kept it simple, and and him and Kent, they moved around, so that makes it difficult for opposition defences. Did they track the man? Did they pass the man on? Things like that's important. Movement is very important if you're trying to break teams down. I mean, I was quite surprised actually how deep Killie were. They didn't really get into the game at all. I mean, that's credit to us to a certain extent. We're winning the ball back quick, but so with that amount of possession, obviously it's important you get guys like Barker and Kent on the ball, and we did that to good effect, especially in the second half. I thought we did all right in the first half. We certainly created 2 or 3 good chances. Itten probably should have scored or at least worked the goalkeeper in the first half, and I think what's his name, Kent brought a good save out the goalkeeper as well. And I think Barker, even the second half, he had a shot or two. He struck one well in the first half as well. So the guy's got a lot in his locker. It's just a matter of him being able to play regularly and to, when he does play, to show it. I mean, last season he had some decent games. I mean, I remember his first league game for us was when Kent made his sort of debut after coming on, signing on as a full transfer, and came in off injured, I remember, just before half time, and we were kind of struggling at that point. We were 1-0 down against, was it against Livingston? I can't quite remember, Motherwell. It was against Livingston actually, last September, and I thought Barker had a really good game that day, and he scored the third goal and sealed the game for us, and that was with his right foot. So he's a decent player. It's just, as I say, but we've got a few of these guys that are, you've got your Murphy, Jordan Jones, Greg Stewart. They're all decent players, but the problem is getting them playing regularly enough and enough minutes in their legs so that they're sharp and they're dangerous and they're creating stuff and they're scoring goals. And that's where it's tough. And it's the manager really needs to make sure he picks 1 or 2 and plays them more often. Because I think last season especially, we were a bit over-reliant on a sort of 11 or 12 players, and when other guys did have to come in when folk got injured, that's where we kind of struggled after the new year. So it'll be interesting to see just how much Barker features, but because we've all been asking for more wingers or more support sort of attacking players, so if Barker can do the business, then we might not need to do that, because as John mentioned earlier, the transfer window doesn't close until the end of October. So you don't really have to panic at this point and bring in players if their existing guys are going to go in and do the business.
But the hair is a problem, isn't it? I mean, that's the Barker's biggest problem, is that hair.
Well,
I wouldn't pick him for that hair.
I'm pretty bald. I use balding clippers, so I'm going to kind of slag anybody about their hair.
But Frankie, that's the whole point here. You've accepted what nature has bestowed upon you. Barker's hiding it. That's just, there should be certain standards at Rangers, and I think all he gets because of that.
A number 2 all over would definitely help. The photograph that Colin, just sorry to the listeners for going back to the Hill Walker, but Colin posted a photo on Twitter, and it looked a bit windy and wet and windswept at the top of Ben Venue earlier, and I kind of thought that he had the Barker look going quite nicely at that point.
Yeah, okay, aye, very good.
This podcast isn't filmed.
I should point out, if Barker does have an issue with his hair, I think we're being a bit hard on the boy. But I should point out, I am 3 years off my 50s. You know what I mean? So if I do have a bit of a Barker thing going on, then I've earned it. And you know what, Stuart? Doesn't matter how much hair I've got, it's more than you. So that's all that matters.
I'm good looking though, Colin.
That's 2 cracking jokes you've come out with tonight. You should be on stage. Right. Coming back to you, John. The second goal came for Ryan Kent. I get like Roof's a very good finish. Cross into the box from Barker. Tav sort of had a crack. It's came back to him. He set it up, and I quite liked how quick Kent was with his feet. He set it with his left, and just the only place he could. There was a good sort of replay from behind.
Really, wasn't there? A really composed finish, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it seemed to me there only was one path into goal, and he found it. If he'd sort of hit it anywhere else, there was a keeper, there was bodies on the line, but he's just seen that route into goal, and he's passed it in. And like Morelos, there's a bit of speculation. Leeds have come in apparently. Well, I think it's been confirmed now with a £10 million bid, and unlike Morelos, whereas Gerrard was in a position of accusing him of having his head turned and all that kind of thing. Ryan Kent's performance yesterday seemed to lift a wee bit. Now, again, Kent is another one that's sort of been taking a bit of stick, probably a wee bit unfairly. One thing I will say about Ryan Kent, he never hides. He's always looking for the ball. He's always trying to make things happen. It doesn't always come off, and I think that's what frustrates supporters. But in games where things are really struggling, he always looks for the ball, and I like players like that. People that don't hide and want responsibility to take things on. So in terms of the speculation, he showed yesterday that he is key to Rangers. That's his third goal of the season in 5 league games. So he obviously is key. £10 million bid now. You've seen some of the stuff getting talked about through the week. We spent $7 million on him. There's talk that Liverpool have a sell-on clause. So for £10 million, it wouldn't seem worth it from a Rangers point of view. But how much do you think it would take for Rangers to accept a bid if that was going to happen?
I think if we sell Morelos, it certainly takes the pressure off Rangers to sell him. I think if we were to sell Morelos for, a 7-figure sum, then that surely takes some of the financial pressure off the club to sell another player. Now, I'm not entirely au fait with the club's finances, and clearly we're in. There's going to be issues in terms of loss of match day revenue, in terms of corporate hospitality and catering and that type of thing. But I haven't seen any figures, but the Rangers TV. You're the first person I've heard say they had a problem with it. Most people I've spoken, for everyone else I've spoken to, has commented on actually how much better it is this season. And I don't mean just the presentation of it, but the actual quality of the feed. But I'm assuming they're making reasonable money from that. I'm assuming people who don't have season tickets are buying into that. There's still the money coming in from the TV deal. So it will come down to whether Rangers need to sell him. And I suspect if we sell Morelos, we don't need to sell him. And I suspect they won't unless the player himself pushes it. In terms of what it would take, Man United signed a young winger. Is it James? Daniel James, I think his name was, from Swansea or Cardiff. So they signed him. He was 20, that kind of age, similar age to Kent, similar position, and he was 15 million. It cost 15 million for them to buy him. So I guess that's the kind of going rate in England for a player of that type, of that age. And realistically, Colin, I think if any club offered us £15 million for any of our players, it'd be hard for us to turn down. And there's a danger here for Rangers in that clearly part of our strategy as a club is to find guys like Kent who don't look like they're going to make it at their parent club and offer them a route back into the English Premier League. And if Leeds are come back with an offer that Kent's agent, for example, feels is acceptable, and if they offer to double Kent's salary, then there is a chance that they might turn around and say, well, hang on, you guys, the club's doing well out of this, you're holding my player back, so that could be an issue, and the club won't be ignorant of that. They'll understand that is an issue because football's a big village. People know, and part of Rangers selling themselves to players like Kent is this, realistically, a stepping stone. You come here, you get choice of playing in some big games, you get used to playing in front of big crowds, chance to play European football, chance to play, latter stages of cup finals. You'll raise your profile. You have a chance then to move on somewhere else. That's what the deal is with Morelos. That's what the deal is with Kent. Let's be honest. Kent has not joined Rangers because he wants to stay at Rangers for the rest of his life. He's joined Rangers largely, I suspect, because of Gerrard and the other coaches who he knew from Liverpool, and also because he obviously sees this as a chance for him to fulfil the potential he clearly has. And let's be honest, that potential will only be filled if he can return to the top flight of English football. But I don't think we'll sell him. I think we'll hang on to him. I think we'll do it. We can say and do enough. As long as Morelos goes, I think we'll say and do enough to keep Kent. And I hope we do, because there was a moment yesterday in the first half. I don't remember who played the pass. I think it was Davis. I can't remember. It was kind of ball, kind of dinked over the top. Kent went through, and his control, his first touch was just beautiful. And the keeper came out. Keeper McKelly, defender, kind of came out and blocked it. I don't know if you remember it. The first touch was just exquisite.
The way he brought it down. I don't even think he was looking. He just knew where the ball was going to be.
Say again.
He just knew where the ball was going to be. I don't even think he looked.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It was just, and you realise that when you see him do things like that, you realise that this is a player who is, he has got something that not every player has. He's frustrating at times because he like you said earlier, he doesn't hide. I still think he makes the wrong decision too often. He kind of runs into cul-de-sacs, or there are times he holds it for too long when he should release it. I don't think it's any coincidence that he's had his best games for Rangers against Celtic, when he gets a team who come to players toe to toe. They don't come and sit with everyone behind the ball and just basically try to stop us getting forward. When he's given space, you've seen him at European games as well. When he's given space, he can really hurt teams. I think that's no coincidence. And I think that's part of the frustration I have had with him in the past. There's times when I just think, made the wrong decision there. But that's experience. That comes with playing games. That's how footballers learn these things. What wise defenders, heavily marked. He's fouled regularly during games. I hope we keep him. I think he could be really important to us this season. I really do hope we keep him, particularly if Morelos goes. And I suspect we can if Morelos goes. That's my feeling on it, Colin.
So hopefully Kent will be staying. But Frankie, 2 players left the club this week. And I think most supporters felt a wee bit disappointed. Young players that I think at various stages we thought had maybe a future at the club. I'll come to you on Ross McCrory, and I'll go to John on Greg Docherty. So Ross McCrory first. Does it feel like the right move to you for the club and for the player?
You'd have to ask Ross McCrory that. I think we are disappointed about McCrory. I mean, he's been touted as a sort of a future Rangers captain in the past. I think we've all seen that potential in some games he played. Latterly against Celtic last season, where he played in both the wins at Ibrox against them. So you're kind of hoping he would kick on, and unfortunately it never happened for one reason or another. Sorry, it was the season before when he in those games, but. So when somebody's been at the club as long as McCrory has been, it's a shame to see them go. But again, you've got to trust the manager. You've got to say at this point he isn't good enough to play for us. John made a good point though about Ryan Kent and about how part of our transfer strategy should be to sort of snap up young players on the fringe English Premier League sides, and that's maybe what Aberdeen are looking for here, and we're maybe trying to play the part of Liverpool, if you like. So guys like McCrory, you're kind of hoping that if we do have to move them on, there's maybe some sort of buy-back clause in there. So if he does go into Aberdeen and do the business, then hopefully we'll have the sort of first call on bringing him back at some point. I mean, it's up to McCrory to go and show Gerrard and show the rest of the coaching team at Rangers that we are wrong to let him go. I mean, the guy had a lot of positive attributes. He was fairly strong. He was quick. He could play in a lot of positions. He could play right back, midfield, centre half. That was maybe one of his failings in some respects. He wasn't good enough in any one position to really be relied upon regularly by the manager. And it's a shame that Ross has went. I liked him as a player. I really did. And I kind of surprised me he didn't play more often than he did. Certainly last season, obviously, he was away on loan at Portsmouth, and I didn't think that went particularly well for him either. He ended up playing right back for them, and I didn't think, by all accounts, that he did all that well. I think he picked up an injury as well. So, unfortunately, it's just a case that it wasn't going to happen for him here. So I think it's the best move for both parties. We've got a decent fee, and by keeping him in the Scottish League, we'll certainly see how well he does over a season, hopefully he can do the business against Celtic when Aberdeen play them. And obviously, because it's a loan deal, the way they've structured that, he can't play against us this season. So we won't lose out in that sense. So we can only wait and see. You'll never know until maybe this time next year how good or how bad that decision it was. So it's just, unfortunately, it's just one of those things.
On the structure of the deal, Frankie, I found it a bit strange, on loan until the end of the season, and then it's going to be made permanent. Now, I've since read that Aberdeen have come out and said it's because of the current situation, the COVID situation. They don't feel they can afford to pay for him just now, but hopefully they'll be in a better position at the end of the season. I have to admit, when I first saw the sort of structure of the deal, it made me wonder if there was another aspect to this deal that we don't know about yet. And the one name that's getting linked to us all the time is Ferguson at Aberdeen. Do you think that's a possibility, or is that, or are we just speculating here?
Ferguson's a decent player, but I don't think Lewis Ferguson is a player that would improve us. I don't think he's a player that would play every week and help us break down opposition teams. Would he help in European games and be this destroyer type player, or in some of the bigger games? Maybe but I mean, that's what McCrory was can he do when he played, and he didn't make it. So I can't see why he would go and buy I'm not saying they're entirely similar, they're not, but I mean, Ferguson's game is all about aggression and getting in people's faces. I'm not even entirely convinced he would get away with that at Rangers anyway. I mean, we've seen another dreadful refereeing performance yesterday by Clancy. I mean, remember the booking for it, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. And there was one or two other decisions. So I can't imagine Lewis Ferguson, who's pretty aggressive, I don't think he would get away with it. So I can't see Ferguson signing for us. I don't think it would be the right move. I do think we need an armoured field player. I think we're starting to get a bit short there, especially with McCrory and Docherty both going. I'm not entirely convinced about the Stephen Davis at the minute. Kamara and Jack are both good players, but I think we definitely need another midfield option there. And I think effectively McCrory and Docherty moving on and us getting probably the better part of £1 million for the two of them will help us fund another midfield player. So I think that's probably going to be our priority over the next 2 to 3 weeks is to bring another midfield player in. And I don't think, and I hope it's not Lewis Ferguson.
Oh, controversial.
What do you mean when you say you're not convinced about Davis just now? I thought Davis had a great game yesterday. I actually thought Davis was the difference in our team yesterday compared to Kamara. I think he's a much more forward-looking player than Kamara, which is what I thought we needed yesterday. I'm really interested in that, Frankie. That's an interesting.
No, it's fair comment, John. And I think Davis is one of the players for me after the new year seemed to struggle last season, and I just think he's not quite as effective as what he was when he was a few years younger. And you're right, I thought he did okay yesterday. I thought it took him a while to get into the game. He gave the ball away quite a lot early doors, but that's fairly understandable. He's not played for a few weeks, so get him up to the pace of the game. And I think it was the right decision to play him ahead of Kamara or Jack, one or the other. I would always prefer Jack personally to be playing, because I like Ryan Jack. He's a really player of good quality. And I was pleased to see Davis play, but I'm still not convinced he's got what it takes to play every week for what the best part of 60 games. I don't think he's got 40 games. It's not just 40 games. I mean, how many have we played over the last 2 years? I mean, obviously the league was finished early, but it would have been 60 games again last season if we played to the end, and it was 60 odd the season before. Davis hasn't got that in him, and so that's probably my general point. Stephen Davis is a great player, of course he is. There's no doubt about it. And you're right. Yesterday he was playing some passes that we didn't see or enough against the likes of Livingston, and I was surprised that we didn't have that kind of forward thinking player that can do Davis is still quite good actually defensively. He's good at nipping in and winning possession when it doesn't really look like it because he's not that aggressive, but he reads the game well. So it's not, I don't think it's a huge risk to play Davis in some games when people think, oh, we need to have 2 holding players or what have you. But as I say, in terms of longevity, I don't think he's got it there now. I don't think he's got the hinging. So I think we do need to have another midfield player in. I think he'll still play his part like he did yesterday, and I hope he does because I like him. But I think we need to have a bit of succession planning, if I'm honest.
John, on the other player, Doherty. Now, I was when he signed it reminded me of when we signed Ian Ferguson from St Mirren in the sort of late 80s. I remember that was quite a sort of protracted transfer, and it seemed to rumble on. And you wanted the boy to sign because he was a Rangers man and it was his dream. And I think every supporter likes to see people do. We would all love to have done, we would all love to have pulled that jersey on and represent the club. And I was delighted when we got Doherty. And don't get me wrong, there was still aspects of his game that he needed to improve. I thought his reading of the game was good. I thought he could intercept a lot of passes and read the game well. Distribution a wee bit ropey at times, but I genuinely felt that there was a player there, and if we could develop him, he would maybe turn into something. How do you feel? I'm a wee bit disappointed that Doherty's away. How do you feel?
Yeah, I really agree with you. Once again, agreeing with you. This isn't going to make good listening.
No,
I feel very sorry for Doherty. That's no different from when we're usually on. But I feel sorry for Doherty. Like you, I don't see what more he could have done to have earned a chance in the team. Every time I've seen him, I've thought he looked okay. There are times you felt he was trying a wee bit too hard, but I suppose with the type of lineup we've got, we're playing 2 sitting midfielders. And if he's fit, Jack is always one of them. And then it seems to be either Kamara or Davis with maybe Arfield if for whatever reason one of those two or both of those two aren't available. And then you've got more attacking-minded type players. Your Kents this season, your Barkers, and then obviously whoever he's kind of going to play up front with them. And I think maybe Doherty, I'm not sure Doherty fits quite. Is he an attacking midfielder or is he a sitting midfielder? I'm not sure. I'm entirely sure. But I feel very sorry for him. I feel he did. I don't know. I kind of think, why did we sign him? Is it just one of these gambles that you take, that you see a youngster and you think, yep, okay, there's potential there. Let's bring him in and see how it goes. But unlike McCrory, every time Doherty went on loan, he seemed to do very well. His time down south, I forget the club he went to. Was it Shrewsbury? Was it he was at? You get Player of the Year. Now, I think they were in League Two. It wasn't, except he wasn't playing at the top of the Championship or something like that. But he get Player of the Year. His short spell at Hibs last season, the Hibs support were really happy with him, and certainly I know Hibs the Hibs fans were pretty keen on signing him. They felt that he was, he would definitely be an asset to them. So I feel very sorry for him, and he's the kind of player I felt there's been games. I thought last week against Livingston was the kind of game you needed Doherty. You need someone who can scrap at times. You need somebody who can run, who can just give you that bit of momentum. A midfielder that gets into the box, and I think that's what Doherty has. And I'm frustrated that it's not worked out for him. And I guess a part of it is the fact that he is a blue nose, he's a local boy, that he was doing what we all wanted to do, what we all dreamt to do. He's doing it, and then when it doesn't work out, you kind of feel bad. And unlike McCrory, I think McCrory did have chances, I think McCrory did go on loan, didn't seem to work out as well as Doherty's period on loan. plus, every time I saw McCrory play, I thought, I don't know what your position is, mate. You're not a centre half. You're not going to make it as a centre half for Rangers. You may well make it as a sitting midfielder. Anytime I'd seen him play as a sitting midfielder, I thought he played pretty well. He is defensively minded. He brings height, which is a thing that our team is lacking. I don't think he's a right back. I don't think he's any good there. But Doherty, I saw differently. I thought Doherty looked much closer to the finished article, and I'm surprised he didn't get a chance. And I'm a little frustrated and a little disappointed. But you have to say that the coaching team and the manager, they're seeing him far more often than us, Colin, and you just have to assume that what they see in training, he just wasn't quite there, just not better than what we've got in front of him. And as such, you do need. There's no point in having him around the club if it's not going to work out. You might as well move him on. And we've got some money for him. Hull, I think Hull are in League One now. So what's the English kind of third division? But a decent sized club of potential. It sounds like not a bad move for him. Good luck to him. Yeah, I really do wish him every success. I think he goes with everybody's good wishes. He didn't work out, and that's a shame. I don't think it's a great thing for the club. I think it will make it slightly harder the next time, a Hamilton or a Motherwell or these kind of teams have a decent prospect. I think it makes it slightly harder for us when we go a knocking on the door. When we can't point to say, right, that player came in and look what he did, look where he went, look how his career progressed. Unfortunately, the lad what's the other one, Hasty, who's gone back to Motherwell on loan. I mean, he's barely played a game for us. Doherty as well. I don't know if that helps us in that cause, if the next time they get somebody in who's half decent. But I guess you have to back the management on this and say, okay, they see him every day. But I am disappointed, and I don't think he got a good enough chance.
Yeah, I'd agree. It was the fact he was prepared to go out on loan. It seemed to me he was prepared to work as hard as he could to sort of cement a place in the side. As you say, John, Gerrard and Gary Mack and all the rest are seeing him every day, and for whatever reason they feel it's not going to work for the boy, so best to move him on. But yeah, slightly frustrating that it's not worked out from Frankie. Moving on a wee bit, there's been another issue this week regarding Castore and the kits. There was loads of stuff on Twitter. There's been a thing pretty much since the kits were released. Guys and girls, I should say, are still sort of tweeting that they never got their order in time. They're still waiting on their shirt. I've seen people posting photographs of kits after one wash, and badges and stuff are coming off. And given how it was sort of presented as we went into this deal, that Castore were a sort of high level brand, and it was going to be quality gear and all the rest of it. Is this much about nothing? Because folk have pointed out that when Admiral took over the kit stuff in 1990, the shell suit went purple after a couple of washes, and these things happen. But I must admit, to me, it does feel, given how it was presented, it feels that this is a wee bit embarrassing for the club and Castore. What about yourself? How do you feel about that whole situation?
It's a bit of both. I mean, the Castore said quite a lot before they released any of these kits. They said they would be on top of demand. They knew that what kind of demand was going to happen. They were very clear in saying that they had different factories across the world that could cope with orders and get them out in time and all the rest of it. And it hasn't really happened. And there's a fair amount of disappointment. However, we do have to put in a bit of context. I mean, there's been over 100,000 strips being sold. I mean, that's a huge number. And I think if you'd asked me that maybe like 2 months ago, would we sell 100,000 strips? And I would say, well, I'm not convinced. Certainly no in the first month. So I think they've probably just been caught unawares to a certain extent. And I think that's still a bit understandable, despite what they claimed to begin with. The problem I have isn't so much in people not receiving their orders or some orders falling through the floor, things like that. That happens. There's always, you can't get 100% in terms of deliveries. It just doesn't work like that. The problem I've got is some of the quality of the kit. They say the stuff is going to be top class. It doesn't really look like it has been in some respects. I mean, the stuff about the school jumpers, I mean, that's utterly ridiculous. It's all well and good trying to fulfil orders, so you sort of subcontract stuff out, but you've got to make sure that the standard of the subcontract is suitable, and you can't sell £5, £10 jumper for £55. Everybody has to make a profit along the line, but there's profit and there's extracting the proverbial, and I think that's what was happening there, and it has been embarrassing, certainly for Castore. I didn't think so much of the club, but I mean, Rangers were quick to take the positives and the praise when everybody was excited about the quality, about Castore, were a great band and blah, blah, blah. Well, they've let themselves down. It's now up to them to fix it. I'm sure they're working hard to do that. As I say, some of the communication has been very poor for Rangers and for Castore. So I think we've got to give them the benefit of the doubt, at this stage. It's been quite unprecedented, the demand. So I think any company would probably struggle to a certain extent, especially a sort of newer company like Castore. So let's see where we are. I think in maybe a month's time is maybe being fair to them. But in the meantime, they really need to get their finger out the arse and help the fans that have been let down and make sure they're refunded, or to make sure they get given what they bought, and I don't think that's too much to ask, because certainly just some clear communication. If I didn't receive something or have a problem with it, then at the very least I expect the company to deal with it properly. Funnily enough, again, we've gone back to hill walking, but I got myself a pair of North Face walking shoes in January, and I've walked a lot more than what I expected in the last 6 months because of lockdown. But a hole developed in the sole in one of them, and I was quite surprised because I have a pair of North Face boots already that I've had for years, and they still look like brand new. And I had issues with North Face, trying to get them to contact me and to get a refund and what have you, and to discuss the condition of the shoe. So it does happen even with the more established brands. So as I say, let's be patient. I don't blame people for being annoyed, but let's not be too hysterical about it, and let's see where we are maybe in a month's time, and hopefully things will look a bit better.
John, moving on again, I'm conscious of time here. There was also news this week that they're looking at allowing a certain amount of fans back into stadia. Quite interesting that Celtic, given the situation with Bolingoli, and that they were one of the two clubs that have breached COVID rules, it looks like they're going to be the club that's selected for the trial match, which I found quite ironic. But once that news sort of came out that they were looking at this, the sort of Rangers Twitterati, the thing was, well, how are they going to decide? How did they decide to get fans into the ground? And those with the most MyGers points immediately were giving it, well, it has to be us because I've got more MyGers points than you. I have to say I disagree with that. I've stumped up for my season ticket. I've stumped up for 2 season tickets. I don't think MyGers is an appropriate way of deciding this. I think a ballot would be the sort of fairest way of doing it. What about yourself? How did you feel when the news came out that fans would maybe be getting back in? How do you feel would be the fairest way of deciding who gets in?
Before I come to that, it's my own personal opinion, and I am not, I don't work for the NHS. I don't have insights into these things, but I won't be going to Ibrox. And if I was one of the people who could get who was told they could attend, I wouldn't be attending. And I am far from convinced this is a good idea. Whichever club or clubs is decided to kind of do a guinea pig on. I know there's many people out there who disagree and think, no, we need to start getting back to normal things. But I think attending football matches. And I say that as somebody who gives up their Sunday night to talk on a Rangers pod. I'm as keen to watch football matches again as anybody, but I don't think it's a good idea. But that aside, to answer the question you've actually asked, I think I tongue-in-cheek suggested to you during the week that they should automatically look at all the people who are in the G postcode and give them first preference, so that we were people who are travelling the shortest distance. That would be what's best for the country. And as somebody who is in a G postcode and could probably walk to Ibrox in about 20 minutes from my house, I obviously, I'm not suggesting I'm biased in any way there, but you two have no chance of getting a ticket under that particular idea. The more sensible idea I saw was to take season ticket holders and say they allow 5,000 in, for argument's sake. Do a ballot, and they pick 5,000 from that ballot, and then for the next home game, those 5,000 can't. Those 5,000 won't be put back in the ballot for the second home game. It will then be taken from the remainder, and then you keep basically doing that until eventually every season ticket holder has been offered a chance to go to a home game, and then you kind of start again. And that struck me as probably being the fairest. I suspect there will be season ticket holders who won't go. I mean, we've got season ticket holders, who are travelling fair distances, and I suspect some of them maybe won't think that's a very good idea. But I suspect there's quite a few who would love to go. And that struck me as being the fairest way of doing it, Colin. I think that way, all season ticket holders are guaranteed a home game under limited numbers. Which home game you get is the luck of the draw. And that struck me as being the fairest way of doing it. But I think we're all agreed that whatever way they do it, they'll hack off an awful lot of people. And there will be considerable complaints, particularly on social media, about it. In fact, knowing Rangers, there's a good chance that whatever they do will upset everybody. And that's just, isn't that why we love them? That's all part of it. They annoy us, so we keep coming back.
They annoyed me a wee bit yesterday with initially it wasn't Rangers TV that was the problem. It was the casting it to my TV. It kept on cutting out, and then trying to get it back on. And then after a few times, I'd have to log out and log back in. And then after about the third time, it told me that I had to subscribe to get the game, which angered me a wee bit. I managed to circumnavigate that. I got around it. I started using the app. I downloaded the app. When I first tried to use that at one of the earlier games, it didn't work. So I just went online and sort of streamed it for there. But I went back to the app yesterday, and I managed to get it up and running, and it settled down after about sort of half an hour, 40 minutes. It settled down, and the stream continued to the TV. But I was getting a wee bit frustrated, and I agree. No matter what way they do it, folk will be kicking off. But I do feel that my Gers, I've always looked at that as another way of allocating away tickets and cup final tickets and semi-finals and European games and that kind of stuff. When supply sort of outstrips demand. Whereas here, it's not really about that. Everyone stumped up their money at a time when we knew, we all knew there wasn't going to be a huge amount of games and we weren't actually going to get in. I paid £42 for my TV stream yesterday when the club were offering it $9.99 to non-season ticket holders. And if I felt that I was now being told, well, you're not going to get a chance to get into Ibrox because this guy across the road, he's got more My Gers points than you, that would anger me, I must admit. But we'll see. I think you're right, John. No matter what way they do it, there'll be a bit of a stushy because that's just how it works for Rangers, especially on Twitter. Sure, I'll come to you for one quick thing about the game next week. Hamilton at Ibrox, you would assume, despite the slip-up last week, it has been a positive start to the season. Not conceded any goals first time since, I think we equalled it last week, and that was, Bill Struth era, sort of the 40s. And yesterday we're back to 1929 since we went 5 games without conceding. We're scoring as well, +9 on the goal difference. Hamilton next week, their form was a bit patchy, but they got a good result yesterday against Motherwell in the Lanarkshire derby. How do you see it going next week?
Sure, they'll give us a tough game. They usually do. It's another plastic pitch, obviously. We do tend to play a bit better on that park than we do at Livingston or Rugby Park, for example. So I'm certainly confident. They won yesterday. By all accounts, it was all Motherwell, and they just didn't take their chances. Sounds familiar to a certain extent. But it does sound like at the very least we should be able to create chances. And I think it's just got to be a matter of doing that and taking them. And if that's the case, then I'm completely confident we'll win. I didn't see any other result. However, I mean, it's not always easy to guess, and what happens at football matches, we all know that. So, I'm just looking forward to another game. It's great to have the football back. It's obviously, as we've just been talking, it's not so good that we're having to watch games on TV or laptops instead of actually being there, but there could be worse things happening in our lives. So I'm just looking forward to, just wish we had another game during the week to watch, and just because we have made a good start. I mean, obviously last week was a big disappointment, but to have scored 9 and without reply in the first 5 games isn't a bad going at all. And consider we've played Aberdeen away and Livingston away, where we didn't always play fantastically well. So let's just hope we can maintain that form and certainly improve upon our form. I still don't think we're firing all cylinders, but playing Hamilton away is a game that we really need to win. And obviously it's the last game before the international break, so I think there's even more sort of pressure on that, because you didn't want to have a fortnight of games after a bad result. So let's bring it on is what I'd say.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think we've started the season well. A wee bit frustrating last week, but I would imagine it would hopefully be another 3 points and another chance to get some of the new boys out and get minutes in the legs. Guys, conscious of time, we've kind of ran over again as we always do, so I think it's time to call time there. So that's all from this week's edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the Independent Rangers podcast, which is made by fans for fans, where the content is free. The game next week against Hamilton, so there will be a show next week covering that and all the stuff that's happened through the week. I think there's more to come in Morelos and various other bits and bobs. So we'll cover that all next week. So join us for that. In the meantime, get yourself onto the Gersnet forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. A big thanks to John and Frankie. I don't know if I'd said that already. I'm having a bit of a nightmare tonight. A wee personal appeal from myself, guys. As some may know, I spend the odd Saturday when I'm not watching Rangers down at Camelin Juniors. Their ground was attacked last night. There was an arson attack on their ground, and a couple of containers, one which was going to be the new away dressing room to allow the club to operate under COVID, went, and another one which was containing food parcels for food banks went. So I'm going to put some stuff up on Twitter. There's a Just Giving page and all that kind of stuff. So if you could share or even donate, that would be much appreciated, because at this time these clubs are struggling, and something like that is catastrophic for a club like Cambridge. So I'll stick that out on Twitter, and if you can do something like that would be great. So until next week, stay safe and bye for now.